tired little face touched her, and she was straightway responsive to the mute appeal in the dark eyes that were lifted to her own with such modest fear and wonder. Now her surprise at her brother's infatuation was abating rapidly. The girl's adoration of him, her wild beauty, her strange winning personality, as rare and as independent of birth and circumstance as genius, had soon made that phenomenon plain. And now what was to be done? The girl was quick, observant, imitative, docile, and in the presence of strangers her gravity of manner gave the impression of uncanny self-possession. It seemed as though anything might be possible. At Helen's suggestion, then, the three stayed where they were for a week, for June's wardrobe was sadly in need of attention. So the week was spent in shopping, driving, and walking, and rapidly as it passed for Helen and Hale, it was to June the longest of her life. So filled was it with 1,000 sensations unfelt by them. The city had been stirred by the spirit of the New South, but the charm of the old was distinct everywhere. Architectural eccentricities had startled the sleepy maple-shadowed rows of comfortable uniformed dwellings here and there, and in some streets the life was brisk, but it was still possible to see pedestrians strolling with unconscious good humor around piles of goods on the sidewalk, businessmen stopping for a social chat on the street cars moving independent of time, men invariably giving up their seats to women, and strangers or not, depositing their fare for them, the drivers at the courteous personal service of each patron of the road now holding a car and placidly whistling while some lady who had signaled from her doorway went back indoors for some forgotten article, now twisting the reins around the brakes and leaving a parcel in some yard, and no one grumbling. But what was to Hale an atmosphere of amusing leisure was to June bewildering confusion. To her his amusement was unintelligible, but through inconstant wonder at everything she saw, no one would ever have suspected that she was making her first acquaintance with city scenes. At first the calm unconcern of her companions had puzzled her. She could not understand how they could walk along heedless of the wonderful visions that beckoned to her from the shop windows, fearless of the strange noises about them, and scarcely noticing the great crowds of people or the strange shining vehicles that thronged the streets. But she had quickly concluded that it was one of the demands of the new life to see little and be astonished at nothing, and Helen and Hale, surprised in turn at her unconcern, little suspected the effort her self-suppression cost her. And when over some wonder she did lose herself, Hale would say, "Just wait till you see New York," and June would turn her dark eyes to Helen for confirmation and see if Hale could be joking with her. "It's all true, June," Helen would say. "You must go there some day. It's true." But that town was enough and too much for June. Her head buzzed continuously, and she could hardly sleep, and she was glad when one afternoon they took her into the country again, the bluegrass country, and to the little town near which Hale had been born, and which was a dream city to June, and to a school of which an old friend of his mother was principal, and in which Helen herself was a temporary teacher. And rumor had gone ahead of June. Hale had found her dashing about the mountains on the back of a wild bull, said rumor. She was as beautiful as Europa, was of pure English descent, and spoke the language of Shakespeare. The Honorable Sam Budd's hand was patent in this. She had saved Hale's life from moonshiners, and while he was really in love with her, he was pretending to educate her out of gratitude. And here doubtless was the faint tracery of Miss Anne Saunder's natural suspicions. And there Hale left her, under the eye of his sister, left her to absorb another new life like a thirsty plant, and come back to the mountains to make his head swim with new witcheries. End of chapter 19.